Jai Hind. Pulwama was not just a terror strike. It was the security system breakdown which was exploited by the terrorist groups. Let's understand what led to such a horrific incident where we lost our brave hearts. Kashmir, for those who do not know, in the early 2019 was a very high tension place. Winter snowfall had shut down the Jammu Kashmir Srinagar National Highway, which we call it National Highway 44, for several days. Such conditions used to happen a lot. And because of the road closure, thousands of CRPF personnel also were stuck in the transit camps in Jammu. The scenario was such that the flights were insufficient to airlift everyone. So, a large road convoy was asked once the highway reopened after so many days to move. 14th February 2019, you know what happened? A convoy of about 78 vehicles carrying around 2,500 CRPF personnels was scheduled to move from Jammu to Kashmir, which was approximately 270 odd kilometers. You know, in counter-insurgency areas, such big convoys are normally avoided. But due to certain circumstances like backlog, operational necessity, it forced a large movement in such a scenario. And this becomes the first vulnerability. And that is what these terrorists are looking for, vulnerabilities. So the attacker had made a lot of preparations. It wasn't an abrupt attack. The attack was carried out by Pakistan-based terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Mohammed. They were looking for the opportunity. You know who was the attacker? You'll be surprised to know. He was a 20-year-old local Kashmiri named Adil Ahmed Dhar. He was from Pulwama district only, Kakapura area. And he had joined the terrorist group in around 2018. He was radicalized locally. He was used as a suicide bomber, a Fidain one. Investigations later revealed that around 200 to 300 kgs of explosives were assembled. Materials including RDX, ammonium nitrate, even gelatin sticks were found. Explosives were smuggled and locally assembled over weeks. And a vehicle was made ready, some Maruti van, which was modified as Vehicle-Borne Improvised Explosive Device, which is called VBIED. Yeah, VBIED. So this was not a spontaneous attack, well planned. And it required recce, it required local support, safe houses, people who support them, intelligence about the convoy movement, precise movement and the patterns monitored करने के बाद. मतलब see the amount of heartburn, or you can say negativity these people have. You know what happened on the day of attack? Morning, 14th February 2019. The convoy leaves from Jammu around 3:30 to 4 a.m. around that time. And the route was Jammu, Udhampur, Banihal, Anantnag, and then Srinagar. The ROP, which we call it Road Opening Party, it conducts a sanitization drill on the highway, okay, which is a standard counter-insurgency drill procedure, IED procedure, okay. They check for IEDs en route or on the road. But ROP checks are generally designed mainly to detect the roadside IEDs, right? They're not there for the fast-moving suicide vehicles because they never expected this sort of an attack earlier. So what happened was, in the afternoon at around 3:15 p.m. at a location called Lethpora area, which is in Pulwama district, the convoy was moving normally in civilian traffic, right? There were civilians around, civilian vehicles. And this is actually the key vulnerability. When your military convoy mixes up with the civilian vehicles. And at that moment, taking advantage of that moment, the suicide bomber was waiting on the link road. He merged into the highway traffic. Okay, he accelerated towards a CRPF bus, and that was of 76th Battalion. You know what happened? The impact was so massive. The explosive driven, or you can say explosive laden car, it rammed directly into the bus, and it was a massive blast. Okay, the bus disintegrated instantly, and nearby vehicles were also heavily damaged. 40 CRPF personnel were killed on the spot. One of the deadliest attacks in the Kashmiri insurgency history. Things which I feel went wrong here was a very predictable convoy movement. You shouldn't start at an accurate time, same route. You should not be so predictable. Otherwise, you'll be vulnerable for such attacks, okay? You should not have routine schedules, and which had developed, and because of which the terrorists could observe the timings, they could study the convoy patterns, they could identify the weak stretches or the weak spots. Second, I feel the reason was the large convoy size. The more the number of vehicles, the slower the speed would be, the more traffic exposure would be there, and harder protection. That is important because you'll not be able to protect your vehicle in a convoy which is quite long. It had happened with us also. It is very difficult to take all of the vehicles together in a convoy if it is a very long one. And more so, civilian traffic cannot be halted for such long convoys. So the highway was not fully sealed in this case also. Hence, an hostile vehicle could approach at a speed from anywhere. Then I would say that there was intelligence gap also. There were general alerts about the possible suicide attacks in Kashmir, that in this month such and such thing would happen. But there was no specific target, no specific date, and no specific attacker mentioned here. So this was taken as not as an actionable intelligence, but as a generic intelligence. Bad. Then learning about the type of attacks. Generally, security forces were oriented more towards attack coming to them in sort of ambush or small arms firing, or maybe roadside IEDs, which earlier had happened, right? But this was a high explosive suicide vehicle, VBIED, which was somewhat closer to the pattern which is seen in Iraq, Afghanistan insurgency tactics. That is why we were not prepared. India treated Pulwama not as a routine terror incident, but as a state-sponsored escalation. Within 12 days, the Balakot airstrikes happened on 26 February 2019. That was our response. By Indian Air Force, our Indian Air Force crossed the line of control, and it struck a major terrorist camp training facility in the Balakot area of Pakistan. It was the first airstrike across the LOC since 1971. During that time, only such sort of an escalation patterns were seen. You know what happened next day? Pakistan retaliated with aerial action. Air combat occurred. And in that incident, Indian Air Force pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan Vardhaman was captured and later returned. After Pulwama, major changes were implemented. The convoys were reduced in size. The air transport increased, reducing the pressure on road transport. Highway traffics were controlled and tightened while the military vehicles were flying. Anti-VBIED drills were introduced. Surveillance and local intelligence network was strengthened. And eventually, major policy changes followed in Jammu and Kashmir in August 2019.